This is 11. This is Steve. And this is Nancy. You know them from Stranger Things. You know this look. And this one. And how could you forget this one? But are they accurate? We got this fashion historian.
Hi, I'm Bethany Gingrich, and I'm a fashion and dress historian.
To fact check the fashion in Stranger Things. First, let's establish a setting.
Stranger Things takes place in the fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana, during the 1980s. Season 1 begins in the fall of 1983, Season 2 begins in the fall of 1984, and Season 3 in the summer of 1985. Even without the title cards, we know it's the 1980s because the Duffer Brothers did a meticulous job of filling the show with references to the period.
Why is no one else wearing costumes?
Because the show takes place over the course of a few years, we can see the full evolution from late 1970s holdovers to nostalgic ideas of 1980s fashion. One thing to remember is that fashion moved much slower outside of the big cities. People simply didn't have access to the same information about fashion that we do today.
Okay, let's get into the looks. First up, 11's Starcourt Mall look.
Eleven's look, after she gets her montage makeover at the Starcourt Mall, shows a new side to her character. She finally gets to choose her own style. Rather than wearing Nancy's 1970s hand-me-downs, cast-offs from Hopper, or her edgy phase from Season 2. Season 3 starts in the summer of 1985, and the fashions are starting to become much more quintessentially 1980s, with bolder patterns and brighter colors than before.
So, is 11's look accurate?
For 1985, this look is very accurate.
Time to get into the layers. Layer 1, the camisole.
We can only guess, but Elle would have most likely been wearing a cotton camisole and underwear. These would have been common for preteens and children during the 1980s. The camisole evolved from a late 19th century undergarment that would have been worn over a corset. It was typically lacy and decorative and made out of cotton or linen. Although the corset gradually disappeared, the camisole continued in styles of undergarments from the 1920s and beyond. The linear columnar silhouette of the 1920s really allowed the camisole to become an essential undergarment in fashion. By the 1980s, it simplified into the undergarment that we know of today. So during the 1980s, the camisole would have been worn by young girls and preteens before they reached training bra status.
The next layer would be the shirt.
Elle is wearing a black button-up shirt with a neon splatter print. I think the print reads a little more late 80s, early 90s. If this shirt was from 1985, I think the color combination would have been a lot more garish, a lot more loud. The pattern would have been not even as subtle as this. The yellow and black shirt that she wears later in the season actually seems more accurate to me. MTV had come on the scene in 1981, and the logos, art, and music that they promoted really changed youth fashion. Now we're seeing brighter, bolder colors and an emphasis on nonconformity in styles. The black and multicolored neon print could have been a choice to cater to more contemporary audiences' tastes. But the baggy fit is on point. The loose fit of the shirt is really emblematic of how everything got bigger in the 1980s.
Next up, the jeans.
Elle is wearing Jordache jeans with matching blue suspenders. They're definitely accurate. Jordache jeans had been all the rage since the early 1980s, and suspenders were nearly ubiquitous for teens. The fit of these jeans definitely matches styles of 1985. The looser cut in the hip and the tapered leg were a stark contrast to 1970s styles that were extremely tight and had that full bell-bottom flare. During the 1980s, teens wore suspenders in a variety of different ways. Suspenders were originally functional straps to keep your pants or your garters up. They were considered underwear because they were rarely or should have been rarely seen. By the 1980s, they had become a popular outerwear look. Rebellious youth subcultures like the punks of the 1970s and the new romantics of the 1980s wore suspenders over their clothes, really giving them that fashionable edge.
Then, the sneakers.
Elle is wearing the Reebok Freestyle high top sneaker, and we can tell this because of the recognizable soft line on the side, as well as the style of the high top. First launched in 1982, the light and flexible Freestyle was created to fill the market need for an aerobic shoe for women. The Freestyle was a part of the growing activewear trend of the 1980s. Sigourney Weaver wore a pair of Freestyles in Aliens, Jane Fonda wore them in her VHS workout videos, and Sybil Shepherd even wore them on the red carpet in 1985.
And then the next layer, the hair.
Elle's hair has some volume and it's pulled back with a scrunchie. I would say this hair is accurate for 1985, but we need to have a quick chat about this scrunchie. Variety in hair accessories really took off in the 1960s and 70s, with new kinds of plastics and fabric hair ties coming onto the market. So it's likely that Elle could have been wearing a scrunchie-like fabric hair tie, but the scrunchie as we know it actually didn't become popular until 1987. The inventor filed a patent in 1986 for a fabric-wrapped elastic hair tie. She named her invention the Scoochie, and she sold it to a man who created a company called Scoochie International in order to sell it. By 1987, the Scoochie had completely taken over. They came in every imaginable material and color. Sometime in the 90s, the name Scoochie transitioned into the much easier to pronounce scrunchie, and the rest is history. So Elle's hairstyle might be a bit of an exaggeration. She could have gone with a bold fashion choice and worn an existing fabric hair wrap, but she could not have known about the new scoochie trend. Her styling and hair volume are definitely accurate.
So here's what 11 would have looked like compared to her styling in Stranger Things. Seems pretty accurate. Up next, Steve.
Steve's style is really consistent throughout the show, and he dresses like a popular, attractive teenager of the 1980s.
Hello, ladies.
Let's go right ahead. First up, the underwear.
Since the 1930s, guys would have had two options for underwear: boxers or briefs. Steve could have been wearing either. During the 1980s, designers like Calvin Klein and Armani were really making underwear for men fashionable and tight. In 1984, I think Steve probably would have stayed simple. He's a teenager in Indiana, not Richard Gere in American Gigolo, after all.
Time to move on to the next layer, the t-shirt.
Steve is wearing a plain navy blue t-shirt. The cotton knit t-shirt originated as a men's undergarment. During the 1940s and 50s, wearing the t-shirt on its own became a sign of rebellion, especially through bad boy celebrities like James Dean and Marlon Brando. As fashion rules relaxed into the late 1960s, the t-shirt became a casual, unisex, everyday look. During the 80s, Steve's plain tee would have been accurate. I also want to make a comparison to Dustin's graphic printed tees, which were very popular in the 1980s. Graphic tees became popular after World War II when they were used in the military. During the 1960s and 70s, advancements in screen printing technology allowed for anything that you wanted to be printed on a t-shirt. By the 1980s, pop culture and branding had really begun to explode, and the graphic tee acted as an advertisement.
And on to the next, the jeans.
Steve wears light wash, mid-rise Levi's with a brown belt. You can tell that they are Levi's by the arcuate arches that are on the back pocket, which Levi's actually trademarked. Levi's is actually the oldest denim brand. Since it transitioned from workwear into fashion around the 1950s, it's never really gone out of style. By the 1980s, jeans were the everyday uniform for everyone, teens and beyond. Jeans in the 1980s had a looser fit and were more straight in the legs than the 1970s. No more bulge and bell bottoms.
And the next layer, sneakers.
Steve has on a pair of Nike Cortez, a shoe that debuted in the 1970s. These shoes would have been popular for teens and adults in 1984 through today. The Cortez was developed as a running shoe, and like the Reebok Freestyle that we talked about earlier, they were a part of the rise of athletic wear into everyday fashion. These shoes are totally accurate.
Let's talk about the jacket.
Steve wears an immediately recognizable members-only bomber jacket. We can see that it is members-only because of the little black label on the side. It's subtle, but it's clear. Members Only is a brand that became popular in the US in the 1980s. This was a popular slim cut jacket made out of cotton or leather. The bomber style jacket comes from Air Force pilots. You can see this in the epaulets and the knit hem. The brand name was so called because of the exclusivity of country clubs, but ironically it was made in all sizes and was sold at a cheaper price point.
But it's only authentic if it says members only right here.
Steve's jacket is definitely accurate for 1984.
What's next?
So I can see Steve's sunglasses peeking out of his jacket pocket. I really want to talk about these. Steve wears Ray-Ban Wayfarer sunglasses.
Oh, yeah.
The Ray-Ban company has been around since the 1930s. Their first design was created by an Air Force pilot to eliminate glare while flying, and that was the Aviator. The Wayfarer, the bold, iconic frame that Steve wears, was invented in 1956. They were designed with the styles of mid-century modern cars and furniture in mind. Because they were so strongly associated with that era, they went out of fashion in the 1970s. By the 1980s, Ray-Bans used strategic product placement in over 60 film and TV shows to bring Wayfarers back. Steve even wears his pair when he's dressed as Tom Cruise's character in Risky Business for Halloween. And the film had just come out in 1983. Since then, Wayfarers have been most strongly associated with the 1980s.
And we have to talk about the hair.
Steve's hair in season 2 has become even more extreme than it was in season 1. It's definitely become iconic. His hair is longer, it's more exaggerated, and it's beginning to grow into a mullet. It feels like Michael J. Fox going from high schooler in Teen Wolf to rock star in Light of Day. The mullet had been popular with musicians and celebrities since the 1970s, and Steve adopting it in 1984 fits right in. The 1980s really saw an increase in marketing of hair products towards men, including gels, mousses, hairsprays, and hair dryers. Billy uses a gel that's marketed towards men, but Steve's secret go-to is women's styling products.
It's Fabergé Organics.
I love this level of detail. Fabergé Organic Shampoo and Farrah Fawcett Hairspray were big sellers in the 1980s.
Do 4 puffs of the Farrah Fawcett spray.
So here is Steve's look compared to the original from Stranger Things. Looks accurate. Now, let's move on to Nancy.
Let's talk about Nancy's season 1 look, where she's wearing this red jacket and she's getting ready to fight the Demogorgon. Nancy's wardrobe has a lot of leftover styling elements from the 1970s. This makes sense because Nancy's supposed to be a real teenager.
So, is Nancy's style accurate?
Right off the bat, it really feels like Nancy's look is accurate.
Let's draw Nancy's look layer by layer. First up, the undergarments.
In an earlier episode, we see that Nancy is wearing a white lace cupped bra. By this time, the formula for women's underwear is essentially the same as today. It's 2 pieces, a bra and underwear. The bra has been around since the early 20th century. Advancements in synthetic and stretch fabrics after World War II ensured more comfort in underwear. Trends in athletic wear paved the way for the bra to fit more closely to the woman's body than it had previously. The 1980s bra had more stretch, and it fit more naturally than 1950s and 60s styles, which sought to change the shape of the body rather than conform to it. From what we can see, it looks pretty accurate.
The next layer, the shirt.
You can see Nancy's collar peeking out from under her sweater here. It looks like a muted brown plaid, which would have been consistent with color palettes of the 1970s. Layered button-down shirts under sweaters or sweater vests feels very on point for the 1980s.
Next up, the jeans.
Just like Elle and Steve, Nancy is wearing jeans. It's no surprise because denim had become universal, casual, everyday wear by this time. Nancy's boot-cut high-waist jeans are totally the right fit and color for 1993. Although we can't say for sure, these were very likely designer denim, a craze that was huge in the 1980s. Big names like Gloria Vanderbilt, Jordache, and Calvin Klein created mass sex appeal through racy advertisements. You may have heard of the infamous Brooke Shields ad.
You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing.
Calvin Klein jeans.
And that brings us to the 4th layer, the sweater.
Nancy wears a turquoise sweater over her button-up shirt. The color of the sweater feels perfect for 1983. This turquoise color feels like it would have fit perfectly in both the 70s and the 80s. This sweater could have been made out of natural or any number of synthetic fibers.
And then, over it all, the jacket.
Nancy's burgundy jacket has a pointed collar and it's lined in fleece. The jacket itself reads very 1970s, both the color and the shape of the collar. It could be a hand-me-down or an older piece from Nancy's wardrobe. The collar is certainly no longer bright white. This jacket was very well loved. When we look at this lining, there's 3 different ways to interpret it. It could be shearling, fleece, or sherpa. Shearling is wool that's still attached to the hide of the animal. Fleece is the wool that's been removed from the animal. Sherpa is a faux fleece made of polyester or acrylic. You can tell this is fleece-lined and not shearling because of the way the jacket is constructed. A real shearling jacket would be very thick. This jacket does not look thick enough to be real shearling. The fleece-lined jacket would have been popular from the 70s into the 80s, so this look fits. This could possibly be faux fleece or sherpa. Versions of faux furs had been around since the 1930s, and in some rare cases, even earlier. Initially, these were a cheaper alternative to natural furs. The animal rights movement didn't go mainstream until the late 1980s. If this is a sherpa fleece, then Nancy would have had to buy it after 1979. That was when the products first became available.
Have you met my parents?
And of course, the shoes.
Nancy wears brown leather hiking boots here. Very practical. These have a rounded toe and a rubber sole, and she wears them fully laced up.
And the next layer, the gloves.
Nancy is wearing white knit fingerless gloves. She's definitely wearing these more for warmth than for fashion, but they still work. The 1980s had some great fingerless glove moments.
The next layer is her jewelry.
Nancy wears simple circle studs that appear to be gold and a watch with a black band. This type of dainty jewelry is often associated with youth, and in the 1980s, there's an especially big difference because of the more ornate styles for adult women. Nancy is 17, but these choices show us her connection to her childhood.
And finally, the hair.
Nancy wears her hair pulled back into a functional high ponytail. I have to point out again here that what Nancy is wearing is not a scrunchie, but it may be a fabric-wrapped hair tie. I can see Nancy's soft waves in her ponytail. When Nancy's wearing her hair down and pinned back with a barrette or a comb, we can definitely see the 1970s influence. Keep in mind, we haven't reached peak perm volume of the 1980s just yet.
So here's what Nancy would have looked like compared to the original look from Stranger Things. Conclusion.
The Duffer Brothers and the costume designers definitely did their research to create realism in Hawkins. These looks aren't focused on what was brand new every year, but instead focus on what real people were wearing. The 80s were the not-so-distant past, and the show really feeds into our nostalgia for that era.